Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we do have snow warnings initially, turning more to rain warnings through tomorrow as this weather front does come in, initially turning to snow with that cold air still over the top of us, especially over higher ground, before turning more into rain, and there could be some rainfall issues with that snow melt, so there could be some surface water flooding perhaps in the north through tomorrow. We'll then have a look at the UKV, I'll look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as it is remaining fairly unsettled, but it shouldn't be raining all the time. Things will turn slightly milder, but again, nothing particularly mild really for the time of year. And we'll have a look at the longer range, the GFS, GM, ECMWF and the ensembles. As we looked at in yesterday's video, it does look likely the jet stream will be displaced southwards as a result of some lingering blocking perhaps around Greenland in the midterm, and that could keep us very unsettled and keep us relatively cool. Again, nothing especially cold as we're running out of that cold air for the time of year, but it does look likely it will probably not be particularly mild. So if you are looking for warmer, drier weather, not looking likely in the next week or two at least, perhaps not even until April now, as we continue to see low pressure coming off the Atlantic and cold air from the north fuel those low pressure systems, giving a cold feel to the weather, regardless of what those upper air temperatures will be. Even if we do see a milder sector at times, with the rain and cloud around, it'll always feel cold out there. So anyway, do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in description. So if we do start on the live radar, you can see this big wall of precipitation moving in at the moment. All this green is indicating rain, and for most areas, really just rain over the course of the next 24 hours or so. However, you can see through parts of Wales and perhaps parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and more widely through Scotland, we will see snow. It will mainly be over the higher routes, perhaps 200 to 300 metres of elevation, and will be turning that higher as the weather front does approach, bringing in milder air, and we could see some accumulations of snow. But once again, for most areas it will be pretty marginal, and to any low-lying areas we will not see any snow at all, really, as this does push in. And of course, once that milder air properly gets in, it will be the snow line will be well above any elevation we can get to in the United Kingdom, apart from perhaps the far north of Scotland, where we could hang on to colder air, and that's when we see the rain warnings issued as the precipitation hangs on through tomorrow, and with the snow melt we could see some flooding issues. So recording this around 12:30, but by the time you're watching this in sort of the mid-afternoon, it's probably going to be pretty dire out there for most areas with this heavy rain pushing in. The only advantage is ahead of it, we are in colder air. It will bring in slightly milder air, but nothing too ridiculous, perhaps into the low teens by the end of this week into the weekend. Now, if I do put on those temperatures, you'll be able to see at around midday, it is not particularly mild out there, but you can see the milder air in the far south and southwest starting to nudge in. Ahead of the weather front to low-lying areas, we've got a bit of sunshine around. Those temperatures are climbing to around 7 or 8 degrees, so average to below average. Over any elevation, though, those temperatures are still lingering around the low single digits, if not towards freezing in some points, especially towards Scotland, and that's where we will see some winteriness over the coming hours. So you can see pretty much here, wherever we've got these lighter blues, that's where we'll see some sort of snowfall, or at least snow falling out of the sky, and we'll just have to keep an eye on what happens to those temperatures over the course of the afternoon. But it is looking pretty bang on that those temperatures will rise as the milder air does move in. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, we have this widespread snow warning, and we have a yellow rain warning for Northern Ireland. Of course, Northern Ireland is going to be impacted by this precipitation first, compared to further areas further northwards and eastwards. So, of course, they've got that rain warning issued for today, whereas the rain warnings elsewhere come into force tomorrow. So, if you look at that rain warning initially, it's from 2 p.m. today until 10 a.m. tomorrow. We're actually seeing a bit of snow in parts of Northern Ireland at the moment, but most of it will turn to rain by around mid-afternoon. You can see rain is expected to set in through Wednesday morning and become persistent for many places. Those impactful conditions are expected to develop from Wednesday afternoon as totals start to build up. Widely, 20 to 30 millimetres of rain is expected to accumulate through the period, although some areas could see up to 40 millimetres. So nothing too ridiculous, but still enough that could cause some surface water flooding, and conditions are expected to slowly start to improve from the west through Thursday morning. High likelihood, lower end of the impact matrix. Now, if we look through into Scotland and parts of northern England now, we have a yellow snow warning issued from 4 p.m. this afternoon until 4 a.m. tomorrow. Spells of snow are expected to develop Wednesday late afternoon to the early evening, mainly above areas of 100 to 200 metres. Again, accumulating snow, I would say probably 200, 300 plus. Later on Wednesday evening and during the Thursday early hours, this snow will then turn to rain as milder weather spreads across the British Isles. Meanwhile, below 100 to 200 metres, snow may fall briefly during the late afternoon and early evening before turning to rain. And again, snow accumulations will mainly be up 2 to 300 metres, with several centimetres falling in some places, especially in Scotland, and above 400 metres to the highest ground, really, seeing perhaps 10 centimetres plus. High likelihood, lower end of the impact. And then into Thursday, we've still got that snow warning for Northern England and Scotland. Rain warning for Northern Ireland, and then we've got two other rain warnings coming into force. We've got this rain warning that actually does cover this whole zone from all the way areas in England up towards Scotland and then into Wales as well. So yeah, there is a gap here, but it is the same warning with the same issues, and it's from tonight at midnight until 3 p.m. tomorrow. Persistent rain will be particularly heavy over southwest facing hills and is likely to cause some travel disruption. 40 to 70 centimetres widely, perhaps 100 millimetres in the wettest spots, with some strong winds. And of course, we'll see some snow melt that could cause some issues. You can of course see that there is an overlap between the rain and snow warning, so it could be a little bit touch and go in these areas, especially through rush hour tomorrow morning, where we still have snow warning in force, but also have that rain warning starting to come in force as well. So we will just have to see how it does play out. Again, the impacts are highly likely, but not particularly high in terms of the actual severity. So hopefully we shouldn't cause too many impacts, but make sure you stay aware of these warnings that are in force. Of course, we haven't seen a rain warning in quite a while, mainly snow warnings recently. So it has been quite a period before since we've seen some very heavy rain. So make sure you do stay safe out there, as there could be some issues, of course, with that snow, and it could be quite a messy picture over sort of moderate hills where you have snow on the ground, but ice around, but still rain falling out of the sky. So if we do now progress over to the UK, we can see how that precipitation and temperature does develop over the course of the next sort of few days. Now you can see that precipitation band pushing in at the moment, turning to snow over the highest routes, and then eventually snow mainly over northern England and Scotland, again over the highest ground. Widespread moderate to heavy rain elsewhere through this evening, and just continues all night, and then eventually seeing reinforcements of that precipitation through the morning, for eventually it does start to clear through the middle to late afternoon, opening the way for some heavy showers. Again, not expecting anything too significant at this stage, but just a lot of heavy showers around, and there could even be some heavy thundery showers, perhaps through Friday there, as we do see a bit of convection breaking out within this low pressure, bit of sunshine, could see a few heavier showers popping off. Beyond that, into the weekend, it continues to remain fairly unsettled, with perhaps through Saturday another day of convection, maybe some heavy thundery showers breaking out. Again, we are getting into that time of year where the sun strength is very warm. We've still got colliding air masses, cold upper air temperatures, warmer surface temperatures, and that really does give the spark for some of these convective showers. So you could see some quite heavy convection through Friday and Saturday through parts of England and Wales, and then finally to end the weekend briefly drier through Saturday evening into Sunday for another weather front approaches, especially further southwards. And this just shows you that the jet stream is tracking southwards, and it will continue with that sort of theme as we head into next week and the last sort of 10-11 days of March. So if you do have a look at the surface temperatures, you can see that this afternoon, widely in the north and the east, it's sort of mid-single digits, maybe 4 to 8 degrees. Pretty chilly out there, but nothing especially cold. Further south and westwards, maybe getting into the double digits as that milder air moves in. It'll be widely turning milder through this evening, still cold in the north through Scotland, but by tomorrow afternoon, widely getting up towards 10 to maybe 13 degrees, so much milder day. But of course, with the cloud and precipitation around, it will feel still relatively cool, perhaps even 15 degrees there across parts of the Republic of Ireland, so getting pretty mild on the actual thermometer, but as I must stress, the feel-like temperature will probably be a few degrees cooler than that, because we'll have cloud, rain and wind around. Beyond that, into Friday, again, probably another mild-ish day. Temperatures generally, once again, around that sort of 10 to 14 degree mark. And then into Saturday, again, perhaps 10 to 14 degrees, maybe 15 degrees peak in some spots. So again, if we do see some sunshine, it could feel a pretty pleasant day. But of course, we have those convective showers. So it could be very much up and down with the temperatures and very regionally based compared to cloud and precipitation amounts. As we head into Sunday, cold front does spread through temporarily, and it could turn things slightly chillier for Sunday, maybe 5 to 10 degrees for a milder air. We'll start to move back in for Monday into Tuesday, as we see those southwesterly winds pushing back in with that low pressure. So if we do now have a look at the long range, look at the GFS, see what that is doing over the course of the next few weeks, pretty much heading to the end of March and start of April. You can see low pressure moving in at the moment, continuing southwesterly winds, and then as you can see, it's early next week. Look at that, we do see big low pressure tumbling in off the Atlantic. Look how southerly tracked that jet stream is. It's because we've got a bit of blocking over the northern hemisphere, over the North Pole, and it's all shoving this cold air and low pressures towards the UK. Now, of course, we haven't got that much cold air left, but it's all being pushed towards the UK, so it could turn cold for a time, especially in Scotland. It could be pretty snowy there. With no big North Atlantic ridge, we've got not a particularly strong northerly wind. That's why the cold air is not spreading widely, but it would still be pretty chilly and pretty unpleasant there. Again, this is sort of day 10 range, but it's looking pretty consistent, as we'll see on the models in a minute, for this southerly track jet stream and this sort of very unsettled low pressure track. And then to end the month, jet stream does return slightly further northwards for the last few days of March, but still generally westerly based, generally unsettled, perhaps slightly milder with more southwesterly winds within the low pressure systems, but again, it's temporary air masses, nothing particularly sustained in terms of milder or drier weather at all. Now, if we do compare it to the GEM, see how that, what that is showing. Again, southwesterly winds over the coming days, brief colder air mass perhaps there towards the weekend and start of next week, and then we see these big lows tumbling off the jet stream, off the Atlantic with the southerly track jet stream. A bit stronger of an Atlantic ridge up towards Greenland block, and you can see more of a sustained northerly wind there. And what this will mean is colder air does sink further southwards, and even colder air reaches Scotland. This could actually open the door to potentially some more significant snow. Again, low pressure system bumping into that cold air in off the Atlantic, mainly will be northern England and Scotland, probably most likely over higher routes, but once again could see some more significant snow. Again, all because of that southern stratospheric warming we saw a month ago. We're seeing these sort of impacts still with that blocking propagating still through the atmosphere. Even though high up in the stratosphere, we've gone back to westerly winds temporarily before we see the final warming in the coming weeks. Still through the lower stratosphere and into the higher troposphere, we still got a lot of blocking patterns and a lot of easterly flows trying to halt the jet stream or shift it southwards like this is doing, continuing to show perhaps cold weather into the last week of March. And finally, if we look at the ECMWF, again, low pressure moving in, eventually we see that southerly tracked jet stream coming, big Atlantic systems pushing in, similar to the GEM with more of a ridge towards Greenland, but that colder air is moving more out into the Atlantic with less of an Atlantic ridge. Still cold, probably still some snow over Scotland, but just generally chilly and unsettled. You can see the temperature deviation is average to below average predominantly there for the UK, keeping us relatively cool. And even if some of these yellows do mix in, it will be associated with a weather front, with precipitation, with rain, so it won't feel all too mild at all. Now, if you finish by looking at the ensembles, you can see over the next week, the temperatures look generally average, or maybe a degree or two above average. But once again, I must stress that this is for London, so further southwards, getting those weather fronts, more areas further northwards, of course, are going to be cooler. And of course, with cloud and precipitation around, which looks pretty likely, it won't give particularly pleasant feel-like conditions. You can see in the longer term through the last week or so of March, definitely trending average to more below average. Once again, it can still change, but definitely looking quite unsettled for that last 10 days. You can see that from more frequency in those precipitation spikes as well. Again, you look at the dew points, indicating the air masses, definitely a trend towards cooler air masses in the longer term, perhaps signs of colder Arctic air moving back in, perhaps not for London really, we're too far southwards here, but for areas further northwards like Glasgow, have a look at that in a minute, definitely cooler. And 2 metre temperatures, again, not getting much above sort of 11 or 12 degrees, which is generally average, but it is going to feel cooler under the precipitation and cloud. And of course, wherever we see cooler sectors come in, especially further northwards, it's going to feel even colder than that. So the far south and southeast may be more towards average and generally pretty mild over the next week or so, but definitely ever further northwards and not going to see those warmer temperatures or milder temperatures. And of course, even in the south where we see the milder temperatures on the thermometer, the feel-like temperature will still be relatively cool. And of course, if we have a look at Glasgow, you can see the upper air temperatures are still average, maybe slightly above average, but of course that is shifted down towards more. The average for Glasgow is cooler. For the 1981-2010 mean, definitely from around the 23rd, we trend more below average. So definitely more of a sign of cooler, cold weather in the longer term. And of course, those 2 metre temperatures, look at that, and struggling to get much above 7 or 8 degrees. And of course, anywhere with more elevation will be even colder than that. And finally, if we have a look at the ensembles for the ECMWF, much more towards average, definitely from around the 21st onwards, more towards average there, so perhaps slightly cooler from the ECMWF, and definitely more of a cluster around that -5 or lower point for the last week or so of March. Again, no huge consistency there, but definitely a trend from perhaps average to below average in the longer term, and of course with more precipitation, of course, making it feel cooler and colder out there. So it's looking likely we're not going to see anything particularly warm or dry over the coming weeks. There will be dry weather around, there will be slightly milder days around, but nothing really too consistent. And the further northwards you go, the risk of more heavier rain and perhaps some snow. Of course, heavy rain will be in the south, and we see that southerly tracking jet stream. That will bring the risk of the heaviest rain, perhaps further southwards in around 5 to 7 days' time, but then it will bring the risk of snow on its northern edge for northern areas. So it's not looking great if you want some sort of spring sunshine out there or anything a bit warmer. It's not looking great for that. It's looking fairly unsettled with this southerly tracking jet stream. Again, have been talked about for a number of days. The sun's stratospheric warming is still showing its impacts in our mid to longer range. But of course, we'll have to keep an eye on what happens. Things can still change. Things are still pretty volatile. We'll just have to keep an eye on what happens. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you again for another video soon.